Mr. President, the boss of a shady temp agency, sits with his subordinates to celebrate 15 years of successful business. He holds a glass of red wine and toasts to his team, specifically mentioning Tamatsu and Natsumi, wishing them a happy marriage and telling them to have healthy boys. He confidently eats a grape from the table, bragging that his personal poison taster ensures everything he consumes is perfectly safe. Suddenly, he violently coughs up a massive amount of blood and collapses dead onto the wooden table. His subordinates panic and aggressively pin the poison taster against the table, accusing him of treason. The taster desperately screams that he did not poison the boss. In reality, the assassination is the flawless work of Hikaru Gero, an elite assassin known as the Poison Master. Gero leaves the scene and returns to his apartment, where he sits at his table and meticulously mixes a colorful DIY candy kit. His sister, Akari, watches him and asks how he managed to slip poison past a professional taster. Gero casually explains that he spent 3 months secretly feeding the taster microscopic doses of the poison. This slow process built up the taster's immunity, so he would not notice the lethal dose meant for the boss, allowing Gero to easily complete the job without suspicion. Akari acknowledges his cleverness, but quickly shifts the conversation to a much more serious topic. She brings up the issue of marriage and reminds Gero that their grandmother is demanding a new heir to lead the Poison Clan. Gero immediately shuts the idea down and insists that his dangerous profession makes marriage completely impossible. He states that he never meets normal women in his line of work and plans to stay single for the rest of his life. He encourages Akari to ignore the clan's rules and focus on living happily with her own girlfriend. However, Akari drops a bombshell and reveals that their grandmother already forced her into an arranged match with a total stranger from a branch family. Since Gero refuses to marry, the clan expects Akari to produce the heir instead. Gero feels incredibly guilty about forcing his sister into this terrible situation, but he remains too stubborn and insecure to change his own mind. Seeking some advice, Gero goes out to meet his underworld friend, the Bugmaster, for drinks at an outdoor pavilion. The Bugmaster casually mentions that he is getting married soon to a very nice, quiet woman. Gero is absolutely shocked by this news. He always assumed the Bugmaster was just as unlovable and strange as he is, especially given his frightening centipede facial scar and bizarre bug magic. The Bugmaster explains that his fiancée completely accepts his true nature and his dangerous lifestyle. He admits that he worked incredibly hard to find someone who would understand him, proving that it is possible. Hearing this story gives Gero a lot to think about. He realizes that finding love might actually be an achievable goal if he puts in the effort and stops feeling sorry for himself. The next day, Gero heads out for his next assassination job. He arrives at a secure facility where a flamboyant boss in a yellow suit holds a marriage swindler named Mei Kinosaki captive. The boss stands behind bulletproof glass and injects Kinosaki with a deadly paralyzing poison. He hires Gero to finish the execution and explains that the poison will slowly paralyze Kinosaki's nerves, causing agonizing pain before death. Kinosaki suffers from the poison, but accepts the impending death without putting up a fight. The swindler confesses to scamming people only to gather enough money to pay for a sick younger brother's medical treatment. Feeling that life is finally over, Kinosaki simply asks for Gero's name. Before Gero can do anything, his phone rings. It is Akari calling him again. She tearfully informs him that she is officially moving back to the main house to marry the stranger. She plans to give birth to the clan's heir so Gero can keep his freedom and avoid being forced into a loveless marriage himself. Gero panics and adamantly refuses to let his sister ruin her life just to protect him. Desperate for a way out of this mess, he looks down at the dying Kinosaki and suddenly proposes marriage. He figures that marrying the swindler right now will satisfy his grandmother's demands and save Akari from her fate. Kinosaki stares at him in absolute disbelief. Despite the paralyzing poison coursing through his veins, Kinosaki bursts into crazed laughter and completely rejects the proposal. The swindler points out that they do not match at all and calls Gero a clueless idiot for thinking marriage works like a simple business transaction. Gero gets very defensive and admits that he grew up completely isolated as an assassin. He explains that he never went to school, never learned how to interact with normal people, and views showing weakness as a fatal flaw. He complains that he genuinely wants to live a happy, normal life with a loving partner who asks about his day, but he has absolutely no idea how to start looking for one. Even while strapped to a chair and slowly dying, Kinosaki takes pity on the pathetic assassin. The swindler gives Gero some blunt dating advice, telling him to put himself out there, meet as many different people as possible, and be honest about his feelings instead of hiding behind his assassin persona. The yellow-suited boss gets tired of listening to their conversation and orders Gero to kill the swindler immediately. Gero flatly refuses to do the job. He decides to hire Kinosaki as his personal marriage advisor and vows to protect the swindler from the boss. The yellow-suited boss laughs at this sudden betrayal and orders his armed henchmen to shoot them both. Gero acts instantly to protect his new advisor. He pulls out a syringe filled with a green serum and injects it directly into his own neck. The serum drastically amplifies his physical abilities and poison techniques. Gero unleashes his clan's secret combat moves, moving much faster than the eye can see. He uses his poison aura to freeze the henchman's bullets in midair and knocks every single enemy unconscious in a matter of seconds. The yellow-suited boss cowers in absolute terror against the wall as his entire crew falls without landing a single hit. With the threat completely neutralized, Gero calmly pulls out his phone and calls Akari back. He promises her that she does not have to marry the stranger because he is going to find a wife on his own terms. After hanging up the phone, Gero unties Kinosaki and prepares to carry the injured swindler out of the building. He complains about having to carry a woman, but Kinosaki casually reveals that he is actually a man. Gero is completely stunned by this unexpected information. Kinosaki explains that he cross-dresses as a woman to scam male targets, but switches to male clothing when scamming women. Later, they retreat to a safe hotel room so Kinosaki can fully recover from the paralyzing poison. Kinosaki officially agrees to help Gero find a bride, promising to teach the assassin everything there is to know about hooking a romantic partner. Wasting absolutely no time, Kinosaki registers Gero for a large matchmaking mixer happening that very night. At the venue, Kinosaki dresses up as a stunning blonde woman to distract all the other men, drastically reducing the competition for Gero. Gero approaches a woman at a table, but he completely ruins the interaction right out of the gate. He violently shoves his phone in her face, aggressively brags about making millions of yen a year, and flashes a terrifying, unnatural smile. The woman screams in terror and runs away from him immediately. Kinosaki scolds Gero for acting like a total creep and decides to try a completely different approach. The swindler sets up a dating app profile for Gero and quickly secures a match with another woman. They arrange a quick date at a nearby cafe to test his skills. During the date, the woman politely offers Gero a bite of her pink dessert from her fork. Gero's intense assassin instincts immediately kick into overdrive. He becomes extremely paranoid that the dessert is heavily laced with poison. He aggressively analyzes the cake, sweats profusely, and suffers a massive nosebleed from the sheer stress of the situation. He ends up shouting like a maniac and completely terrifying his date until she leaves the cafe. Feeling completely dejected by his repeated failures, Gero retreats to a public restroom to clean himself up. To relieve his overwhelming stress, he pulls out a custom-made, highly lethal cleaning agent that he calls Joker and starts obsessively scrubbing the urinals. Kinosaki watches him work and notices how passionate Gero is about mixing dangerous chemicals. Gero admits that he loves making DIY candy and creating powerful cleaning agents in his spare time. Kinosaki points out that having niche, obsessive hobbies can actually be very charming to the right person. The swindler reassures Gero that his weird traits are a strength and promises to find someone who genuinely appreciates them. Encouraged by this advice, Gero feels a bit more optimistic about his chances of finding love. They leave the building and walk down a quiet street together. Kinosaki waves goodbye, and they agree to continue their dating lessons the next day. Suddenly, a speeding van crashes onto the street right next to them. A rival underworld thug with an undercut and lead pellets embedded in his teeth violently snatches Kinosaki and speeds away into the night. The kidnapper is furious because Gero's actions earlier that night forced the yellow-suited boss out of the underworld business entirely. He blames Kinosaki for the entire mess and decides to take brutal revenge. Inside the speeding van, the thug slaps Kinosaki across the face and threatens to permanently ruin the swindler's good looks so he can never run a con again. Despite the beating and the blood pouring from his mouth, Kinosaki remains completely defiant and refuses to beg for his life. The kidnapper prepares to inflict serious damage, but Gero easily catches up to the van as it speeds across a massive highway bridge. Jiro leaps high into the air and lands heavily on the roof of the vehicle. He unleashes a devastating surge of his poison magic, tearing completely through the metal roof and the sides of the van. The sheer force of his attack causes the vehicle to violently crash and explode into pieces on the bridge. The kidnappers are completely obliterated by the magical blast, while Garo easily protects Kinosaki from the destruction. Jiro casually walks through the flaming wreckage and scoops the injured swindler into his arms. Carrying Kinosaki bridal style, Garo leaps off the bridge and lands safely on the ground below. He thanks Kinosaki for the dating advice and admits that he would have given up on finding a wife after just one rejection if he were doing this completely alone. Kinosaki smiles at the assassin's honesty and asks for Garo's phone number so they can stay in touch and coordinate their next move. They exchange contacts, officially becoming each other's first real friend. Jiro accepts that he is completely hopeless when it comes to romance, but he looks forward to his new quest for love, relying entirely on the swindler's expertise to find the perfect bride. The next day, Kinosaki texts Garo to meet up for a practice date at an art gallery situated on a massive cruise ship. Jiro waits nervously by the docks until Kinosaki arrives dressed as a beautiful blonde woman. Kinosaki playfully grabs Garo's hand, causing the assassin to completely freak out and sweat profusely. Kinosaki teases him about how much people usually pay just to hold a swindler's hand, and they head inside the luxurious multi-story gallery. Once inside, Kinosaki decides to test Garo's dating skills by asking his opinion on various paintings and statues. Jiro fails miserably, giving painfully literal answers like stating that a blue painting is just the color blue. Kinosaki docks him massive amounts of points for being too tense, prompting Jiro to panic and frantically search his phone for the right things to say. Seeing him stress out, Kinosaki reassures him that he does not need to try so hard and that a good date simply means both people having fun. As they continue walking, they stumble upon a display case containing a vintage 40-year-old DIY candy kit valued at 30 million yen. Jiro immediately geeks out and stares at it in absolute awe, arguing that it is a priceless artifact, but Kinosaki quickly drags him away. Kinosaki smiles gently, noting how much Garo genuinely loves his candy kits. They stop in front of a geometric painting, and Garo simply states that it looks neat from his current angle. Kinosaki awards him 30 points for the modest effort, and Garo complains about the harsh grading. Frustrated, Garo demands to know what his specific charm is even supposed to be if he is terrible at talking to women. In response, Kinosaki points down to the lower floor where a disheveled, red-haired man is suddenly swarmed by a massive crowd of enthusiastic female fans begging for autographs. Kinosaki explains that the man is Takeru Shiratori, a wildly popular artist, and notes that people are drawn to extreme talent just as much as good looks or personality. Kinosaki lists other examples, like clutch athletes or life-saving doctors, arguing that raw skill creates genuine attraction. Kinosaki then reminds Garo of the moment he single-handedly wiped out an entire room of armed guards to rescue him. Kinosaki insists that Garo's unparalleled combat skills and willingness to save people are his ultimate charm, dubbing this new matchmaking strategy Operation White Knight. Kinosaki suggests that Garo should take on jobs rescuing hostages and guarding VIPs, so that the women he saves will naturally fall in love with him. Garo hesitates, feeling that it is completely inappropriate to use his assassination skills to pick up women, but Kinosaki argues that it just gets him to the starting line and that building a real relationship comes after. They watch as Shiratori grabs his wife's hand and flees from his crazy fans, proving that a solid relationship can survive the chaos. Suddenly, a panicked security guard announces that a famous painting has been stolen from the gallery, suspecting an infamous thief named Kyoko Himekawa. Outside the ship, Himekawa swims through the dark ocean with her shark companion Chomsky to rescue a crewmate. She thanks her shark and promises to go on a date with it later. Himekawa regroups with her crew waiting on a nearby cliff, but a massive magical beam suddenly erupts from the rocks, completely obliterating her team. A mysterious figure in a white suit watches from the cliff as Himekawa stares in utter shock. Sometime later, Garo and Kinosaki sit at a local restaurant surrounded by massive stacks of empty meat plates. Kinosaki happily devours the food while pitching Operation White Knight again. Garo points out that his family only uses traditional brokers, so he has absolutely no idea how to find bodyguard or rescue missions. Kinosaki pulls out a phone and introduces Gero to a shady underground app called the Dark Nav, which lists all sorts of illegal jobs, including rescue requests. Kinosaki immediately finds a gig offering 300,000 yen to rescue a kidnapped leader. The app features a video of Himekawa tied to a wheelchair, while a hooded kidnapper demands that her crew surrender all their stolen artworks in exchange for her life. The clients who posted the job are a group of diehard Himekawa fanboys. They explain that despite her reputation as a thief, Himekawa actually steals art from malicious collectors to return it to the original disadvantaged owners. The fanboys admit they do not have much money and are willing to sell their own organs to afford a rescuer. Seeing that there is absolutely no competition for the job, Kinosaki declares this the perfect opportunity for Gero to play the White Knight. They arrange a meeting with the fanboys in an empty classroom. Gero formally introduces himself as a poison master here to rescue Himekawa, absolutely terrifying the clients who assume he wants their organs to cover his exorbitant fees. Instead of reassuring them, Gero bluntly asks if Himekawa likes men who wear glasses. The fanboys are completely baffled by the question, and Kinosaki facepalms in embarrassment. Meanwhile, in a dark industrial facility, Himekawa sits tied to a chair in front of a military officer. The officer demands that she give up thievery and join his personal collection of beautiful things, promising her a life of luxury. Himekawa defiantly refuses, stating that she only steals for what she believes in. The officer brings out a portrait of a crying blonde girl, revealing it to be the exact painting stolen from the cruise ship. He explains its massive monetary value, but Himekawa recalls the real reason she took it. She remembers meeting a sick father and his young daughter, who begged her to retrieve the painting because it was the only remaining image of the girl's late mother. Himekawa tells the officer that she promised the little girl she would bring her mother back, so she will never surrender it. The officer laughs at her resolve and orders his subordinate, a massive water master named Ushio wearing a bulky diving suit, to break her spirit. Ushio forces a glowing liquid down Himekawa's throat, causing her immense pain. At the same time, Gero and Kinosaki infiltrate the facility using a GPS tracker provided by Himekawa's team. Kinosaki scolds Gero for asking the clients about his glasses, explaining that revealing his ulterior motives completely ruins the White Knight image. As they walk down a corridor, two guards attempt to snipe them from the shadows. Gero instantly deflects the magic bullets and brutally eliminates the guards with a high-speed kick. Terrified by the violence, Kinosaki sits on the floor and begs to stay behind. However, Gero grabs Kinosaki's hand and pulls the swindler up, admitting that he desperately needs help because he has absolutely no idea how to talk to a woman once he actually rescues her. Kinosaki reluctantly agrees to keep going. They run through a parking garage filled with more armed guards. Gero effortlessly dodges their massive weapons and knocks them out, while Kinosaki tries to give him a crash course on empathy. Kinosaki tells Gero to stop thinking about marriage proposals and to focus on how terrified Himekawa must be feeling right now. Back in the interrogation room, the military officer decides to change his tactics. He pulls out a handgun, but instead of aiming it at Himekawa, he points it directly at the priceless portrait. He threatens to destroy the painting permanently unless Himekawa agrees to become his property. Remembering her promise to the little girl, Himekawa breaks down in tears and reluctantly agrees to his demand. Just as the officer gloats about his victory, a vibrant burst of purple magic erupts from his arm. He screams in agonizing pain as the poison completely neutralizes him. Gero steps out of the shadows and calmly announces that he is the poison master sent to save her. Kinosaki watches from a doorway, relieved that Gero managed to deliver a normal heroic line, but quickly realizes that Gero actually jumped the gun and ruined their rehearsed introduction. Gero walks over and unties Himekawa, telling her she is finally safe. Suddenly, the massive Watermaster Ushio looms up behind them and violently restrains Himekawa. Realizing the immense danger, Gero pulls out a syringe filled with his specialized green steroid serum and injects it directly into his neck. The serum rapidly enhances his physical strength and speed. He launches a blindingly fast attack at Ushio, but the Watermaster retaliates by unleashing a massive shockwave of highly pressurized water magic. The blast sends Gero flying backward through the air. Seeing that Ushio is incredibly fast, Gero quickly grabs Himekawa, throws her into Kinosaki's arms, and orders them to escape immediately. Ushio crashes down into the floor, creating a massive crater and filling the room with thick smoke and flying debris. Jero is caught in the destruction and bleeds heavily from his head. As the dust settles, Ushio calmly presents a business card to Gero, officially introducing himself. Treating the deadly battle like a corporate negotiation, Ushio offers to pay Gero 10 times the fanboy's reward money if he simply walks away. Ushio argues that a fight between two elite masters will cause unnecessary property damage and that true professionals should prioritize exponential financial growth over petty compassion. Hiding nearby, Kinosaki spots Gero's dropped syringe of green serum lying on the floor and slowly crawls toward it to help. Jero notices and frantically screams at Kinosaki not to touch it, warning that the serum is actually a highly lethal poison. Hearing this, Ushio instantly deduces the secret of the Gero clan's power. Ushio realizes that Jero possesses a modified bloodline that drastically increases his combat abilities in direct response to being injected with lethal doses of poison. However, Ushio also points out the fatal flaw in this technique, noting that Gero will inevitably drop dead if he does not finish his opponents before the poison completely destroys his own body. Jiro confirms the curse but remains completely unfazed. Ushio smugly declares that Jiro's poison attacks are entirely useless anyway, because his specialized business suit is designed to withstand extreme deep-sea water pressure, making it completely impenetrable. Ushio unleashes a rapid succession of devastating water blasts, violently hurling Jiro across the ruined industrial basement. Jiro takes the hits and admits that the situation is dire, acknowledging that one solid strike will take him out completely. Ushio questions why an elite industry leader like Jiro is risking his life for such a low-paying job. The Watermaster assumes that Gero must be romantically involved with Himekawa to fight this hard. Refusing to back down, Gero gathers all of his enhanced strength and lunges directly at Ushio. He strikes the exact same spot on Ushio's helmet 3 times in a row with pinpoint millimeter accuracy. The immense concentrated force shatters the impenetrable glass visor, sending Ushio crashing through a concrete pillar. Jero stands victorious amidst the rubble and casually answers Ushio's question. He admits that he and Himekawa are complete strangers right now, but he hopes that she might mean a lot to him someday. Inside the ruined suit, Ushio's bloodied face is fully exposed. The Watermaster glares at Gero, completely baffled by his illogical reasoning, and calls him a nonsensical moron. Jero smirks and thinks back to the simple dream he discussed with Kinosaki. He declares that all he really wants is to sit down and have dinner with a loving family every single night. He vows to keep fighting for that ordinary life, firmly stating that he will achieve his goal even if it ultimately kills him. That's it for this video. Remember to like and subscribe for the next part. Thanks for watching.